Hello, everybody. Today is Thursday, April 15th. Welcome to today's Get Legit webinar on the California Track and Trace system. I want to take a few moments to make some announcements and thank some of our very important allied industry business members for helping us to continue doing all of the work that we do. I want to give a thanks to Vital Garden Supply, Ag Natural, Grow Generation, Gold Mountain Distribution, Elevation 2477, Four Seasons Garden Supply, Rolling Hills Bookkeeping, SC Labs, Humboldt Seed Company, Hometown Hydroponics, Foresters Co-op, and Moreland Consulting. Thank you to those businesses for being amazing allied industry business members of the Alliance. For those of you who are not familiar, we are the Nevada County Cannabis Alliance. We are a local nonprofit trade association representing the local cannabis industry. We have a threefold mission: advocacy, education, and connection. We do a great deal of political advocacy, working to create a functional and sustainable business environment for the cannabis industry here in Nevada County, as well as statewide in California. We provide year-round education through our Get Legit education series that this is a part of, as well as industry affair calls and greater community education all about cannabis and cannabis compliance. And connection. We strive to make sure our members are networked in the California supply chain and the cannabis industry, both locally and statewide. Some of the services that we provide here at the Alliance to our members, obviously there is the Get Legit webinars that we host. This is one of them. All of these are recorded, and all of the past recordings of our Get Legit workshops and webinars are available always to our members. We offer monthly industry affair calls that take place and have professionals presenting on from regenerative farming practices to cannabis compliance, business development skills. We have a industry affairs call coming up with the Xerces Society on cannabis farming for beneficial insects, how to reduce pesticide use and promote and increase your beneficial insects, happening on April 21st. We also, as a follow-up to today's Get Legit webinar, we have a Cultivating with Metric industry affairs call that will be a real step-by-step through utilizing metric for cultivators. We also have an industry affairs call coming up on the OCAL program, which is going to be the organic equivalence for cannabis here in California. All of our industry affair calls are recorded. All of them are available to our members all the time. We also offer a buddy program for new members. We pair folks up with already licensed farmers that can help to do a basic assessment to get you started, make sure you're on the right track. This has been a wonderfully successful program, great way to connect with other community members. And then there's our Slack online workspace that is just a hub of resources and information, compliance to policy, you name it, it's there. And yeah, there are lots of benefits to being a member of the Alliance. If you have questions, reach out to us anytime. And then for our Get Legit webinars, like the one you will be enjoying this evening, the next one coming up is on commercial cannabis pesticides. We have 2 of these workshops with our local ag department coming up in May for anybody who is looking to find more information on pesticide management, proper use, and definitely if you are a licensed cultivator needing having employees for training for safety and use for your employees. We also have a Get Legit webinar coming up at the end of May that will be on cannabis packaging and labeling that will be presented by the California Department of Public Health, Cannabis Manufacturing Branch. Stay tuned for those. You can register online for all of those already on our website. And also know that we offer permitting support groups the following Monday after every Get Legit webinar that we host. These are incredibly useful opportunities for people to connect. County staff joins them, and they are just wonderful resources for folks entering and going through the permitting process to get the support that they need. So tune in for that. Reach out to us anytime. You can find us on social media. You can find us, we have a bi-monthly newsletter you can sign up for through our website. You can reach us via email at info@nccannabisalliance.org. Our website is www.nccannabisalliance.org. And just a note on the format for this afternoon's webinar. We have the wonderful Tabitha with us, who I will introduce in a moment. But just so everybody on the call knows, there is a Q&A feature that is wonderful. You are welcome to submit questions throughout the presentation. And when we are done with the presentation, we will make sure to go through all of the questions and get them answered for folks. With that, I would like to introduce Tabitha Chavez from Cannabis Licensing Department, which is a branch of the California Department of Food and Agriculture. And Tabitha, I will let you introduce yourself and your role with Cannabis, but I want to just say thank you so much for taking the time to be with us this evening and share this very important information on the California track and trace system. And you have to unmute yourself.
Sorry, that would help. Hi, and welcome. Thank you. I apologize. I've kind of got two different things going on here. I have my phone, so if I'm not looking directly at you, it's because I'm trying to monitor what's on my computer once we go into the PowerPoint. I am so glad to be back. I'm not sure who's all tuned in, but I did have the amazing opportunity to meet with you guys a couple of years ago when everything was just starting. And I think that so far has been one of my favorite meetings because there was a lot of interaction. So yesterday when I called Maggie, because unfortunately for you guys, you're not ending up with my experts and who are far smarter in all of this than I am, but you have me. And I like conversations, and this is my opportunity to kind of understand what's going on out there. I'm very realistic when it comes to state government. We do not know it all, no matter what another state person may say. We're often bound by regulations. Well, we're always bound by regulations and statute, and we don't always agree with them, but we have to enforce what we have the authority to enforce. So we, in our outreaches, encourage a lot of legislative participation, and I know that that the Alliance is very active in that role, because a lot of you may have been doing this for decades. We are new to it. All the state employees are new to it in the last 3 years. We know how to regulate a business, but that we have to make a lot of assumptions when it comes to cannabis. So partnering and getting the feedback from the industry and people who are considering coming into the industry is extremely helpful for me from a policy perspective. I am the Chief of Compliance and Enforcement of CDFA. When we become a new department, I don't know if everybody's heard, but there's a consolidation that's proposed in the governor's budget that will bring all 3 licensing agencies under one department, a newly created department, Cannabis Control. And I will still be a part of the compliance and investigations unit in that new industry, and we are going to try to mitigate the impacts as much as possible. But again, it's another transition. It's like a yo-yo. We've been doing this for 3 years. We've seen multiple sets of regulations between all 3 of the licensing agencies. And it seems like just when we get our feet under us, somebody changes something else, and it's not always necessarily the best thing or the most timely thing. So all the pains that you guys feel, we're feeling them too. And so where we can partner and where we can improve things, we want to be able to do that. And I'm not just blowing smoke up everybody right now. I really mean what I say. You know, this is my legacy position. I will probably retire from this position, and It is something that I am committed to trying to have good government, not just government for the sake of government. Yesterday, I kindly said that we move at the speed of a brontosaurus. You know, I know that state government isn't always reactive. And so when I look at policy, that's what I try to do, is make it allow the flexibility, especially for innovation in our realm. So with that being said, the more that I thought about what I wanted to do today, I thought about, I have a PowerPoint and I'm going to kind of run through the PowerPoint, but I don't want to sit here and talk to you guys. I could email you all a PowerPoint and you could get the same thing. I want to have a conversation. I want to know what your thoughts are, because a lot of what we're going to present in PowerPoints is stuff that is going to be covered in the mandatory account manager training. It is a system that was not designed for you. It was designed for me. It was designed for a regulator. So it doesn't always seem applicable. I think when you're trying to run a business and you've got a million other things going on, and then there's this looming mandate over you that says that you have to get all your stuff in by a certain time. So I understand that, and but saying that, I just want you guys to know that it was not intended to be something that assisted your operation. It was intended as a result of the Cole memo that used to be in place to ensure the integrity, and I think that it was referred to as a robust track and trace type of system to safeguard cannabis from leaving a local state's jurisdiction. It does not do that. All it does is track if you actually put it in and send it away. It does not have an auditing function. If you do something wrong in metric, it is not going to say, hey, stop, you may be in violation. It's not going to do any of that. It is just going to capture what you did. And if you're doing something wrong, then we will have a record of it. If you're doing something right, we'll have a record of it. All it is a documentation platform for inventory control. And it is only as good as the people that use it and that the data that's being put in it. So with that said, before I get started, do I have any questions from our participants?
I'm not seeing any quite yet. Just some gratitude for you
Thank you guys
today. So yeah, let's go with the presentation, and then just a reminder to folks on the call that you can type questions into the Q&A function or the chat area and throughout the presentation, and we'll make sure afterwards that we get to all of them.
Okay, so I'm not sure. Hold on. Okay, are we seeing a screen?
Yep.
We're screen. Okay, so I'm going to turn my video off so I'm not distracting myself. Please confirm you can still hear me.
I can hear you, and if you want to just put your screen into presentation mode.
Okay, got it. Better?
Perfect.
Okay, everybody. So like I said, this is not the most exciting, sexy thing that we have. This is our track and trace system. So it's IT. I don't mean for it to be for those of you that are using the system and very familiar with it, I don't mean for it to be too layman's term, but I just want to do an introduction and talk about some of our frequently asked questions. And then hopefully I'm going to kind of breeze through this because this is recorded. So you can always, if you're a member, I think you have access to be able to view this webinar at a later date. You can always refer back to this presentation. I am with CDFA Cal Cannabis. For those of you that don't know right now, I kind of touched on it. The state has a beautiful system where there's 3 different separate licensing agencies that you're responsible to based on what type of license you have. CDFA is the cultivation section. We have 17 licenses. 15 of those have to do with cultivation in the 3 different types, and meaning indoor, mixed light, outdoor, and in various sizes. And then we have our nurseries and our processors. The other licensing agencies regulate the rest of the supply chain. One of the most frequently asked questions is, what is an account manager? An account manager is designated when you apply for your license. It is the person that has to be recognized as an owner of the business. So if you have multiple owners, you have multiple choices. If you have a single owner, that account manager may not like computers, may not have anything to do with computers, but unfortunately right now they are the only person, if there's only one owner, that can be the account manager, because it has to be an owner of a business. So the account manager is responsible for setting up the metric, or the track and trace metric account, CCTT metric. And what that stands for is California Cannabis Track and Trace System, which is on a metric platform. Metric is the software that we use. There are probably more than 11 states that use it right now. Colorado uses it, Oregon, Ohio, Louisiana, Oklahoma. I believe Maryland is also using it. Nevada uses it. So many of the states are using it. The one that I know that does not use it is Washington State. We are in a contract with them and will continue to use this system for the foreseeable future. When the contract ends, then that will be an opportunity for other companies to bid. But that is not going to happen anytime soon. So the account manager, they are automatically designated. It's the person that's going to attest and submits the application. So what we often see with that is that people want to change their account manager, and in a couple questions, and I'll explain how you go about changing that person, but it still has to be an owner of the business. So perhaps you have a couple of owners, but one person submits the application, that person's the default designee, but you want the other owner to be designated as the AM or the account manager, because the account manager has to take the classes. In Metric, the way Metric works, you have to take the account manager class before you can get an account, or what we call credentialing into the system. So it's really important that if the person who submitted the application is not the person who's going to handle this, or the owner that is going to handle this, that right away you, once you are licensed, you switch your account manager. The account manager does have to take a Metric new business account manager training. That training is long. That training is several hours long, and it goes through the entire supply chain. And that the system, the platform on which Metric administers the training tracks it. So you have to take the whole training and complete it in order for you to be able to kind of move along in the system to where you can get credentialed. Training must be taken before you can have access, or any accounts get like username. You'll have a username and a password. It can be taken anytime after the application is submitted. You do not have to wait until you are licensed to take that training. The account manager only needs to complete a single course if they're the account manager for multiple licenses. So what that means is that if you own several different licenses under the same business umbrella, then you only take the class once, and they'll have all of your information. So when you bring a new license on, you email Metric support and let them know this license is associated with this account manager who's already had the training. They can look it up, and then they can credential you into this system. The training availability, it's online. I believe that it is given 4 days a week, and it is offered Monday through Friday. And here it says it's 2.5 hours. There are 2 different versions currently. There is a recorded version and there is a live version, and there's not much of a difference between the two. The live version doesn't really, you don't see an interactive person. There's just a live person manning the training, and that can handle some of the questions. As I understand it, this is something that has been proposed to be phased out because none of the other states do live training, and we don't see a significant difference between the recorded and the live training. Most of the questions that are asked are not metric specific questions. They're more related to either regulations or licensing, and they have to be referred to the licensing authority. Sorry, I kept this slide in here. This is from another presentation because it does have the steps. I'm not going to demonstrate how this goes, but it has the steps on how to register for the training. So it will be in this slideshow and you can use it for reference. Once you receive the credentialing and your registration, those emails are good. The links in them are good for 24 hours. So if for some reason you didn't respond to the link within 24 hours, whether it's for registration or credentialing, then that's not a problem. Just email the Metric support desk and let them know and they will resend you new links. Okay, so I've spoken a little bit about credentialing, and we often get questions, so in my role with the agency, when we see that a business has been actively licensed for about 30 days and they haven't been credentialed into Metric, my special investigators are going to begin to reach out to you, because by law, you're required to declare the disposition of all of your cannabis and cannabis products in the Metric system. So when you're not using it, you're in violation. And so we want to make sure that you have the tools that you need to be compliant. So we'll reach out to you and we're looking for a good faith compliance effort from that. If you don't respond or you're ignoring us and you're not doing by the agreed upon timeline, that can result in violations. And the thing about our violation structure is not using Metric would not be one simple violation. You would have multiple violations, and the fines range from anywhere between $100 to $5,000 per occurrence per day. And it takes a whole lot more work for us to issue violations than it does just to help you get compliant. So our goal really is getting you to a place of compliance without a monetary violation. So this is how to take the account manager class. I'm going to leave these again in this slide deck. So I left them in so that way you guys would have them as a reference. So everyone has to take the account, or all of the account managers have to take the class before they can get access into the Metric system, which we refer to as credentialing. And again, you're going to get an email, and that email has links that are good for 24 hours. If you miss the 24 hours, just email the support desk. In step 3, you'll see support@metric.com. That's who you would email and just ask them to send you another credentialing welcome email. How do I change the account manager? So again, we briefly talked about why you may need to change the account manager. Say that in your ownership structure somehow changes and you want to designate somebody else that would be the responsible person for administering your track and trace program. And when I talk about account manager, an account manager doesn't have to do the day-to-day data entry, but they set up the accounts and allow the permissions for those people that are going to use your Metric account. So that's very important that you keep that updated and that person is engaged in the process, because what we often see is that an employee will have an account set up, they will leave the company, and that account goes and is left as it is, and they're working at another business. And so we'd like to remind you guys that it's your responsibility as the account manager to manage your Metric accounts. The first thing that you're going to do is you're going to reach out to Metric. Metric will give you guidance based on the license type that you are trying to change the account manager for. Currently, there's 3 different processes because there's 3 different licensing agencies. I'm going to speak to the CDFA processes in my presentation. If you are interested in manufacturing, you would need to contact CDPH. If it's labs, distribution, or retail, then you would contact BCC, at least until we perhaps are a single agency. Sorry, I'm seeing a question here. It says, hi Tabitha, if a licensee gets a state license and is credentialed, but the project is still under development and no cannabis is on site, is there something that they need to do within any time frame to let Metric know why they're not showing? That is a great answer. That is so proactive. And one of the things that you can do is email our enforcement email, and I can send that out. I'll send that out to Maggie so Maggie can share it with everyone who has attended, and just say, hey, here's my license number. I'm credentialed, but you know what? We're not operational yet. I will let you know when we're operational, and then that will get forwarded to the appropriate SI. Or if you don't do that for some reason, when one of our SIs reaches out and says, hey, why aren't you using Metric? That's where you would have that opportunity to explain that. And we may say, okay, we want to do a video call with you just to confirm that. Or, hey, I'm going to be in your neighborhood. I'm going to stop by just to confirm that. And that's about as simple as it is, because we do know that we have a lot of operators that are still under that situation. And a lot of times you have to get your licenses before you can continue on in your build out process, or, you're just starting and you're trying to get stuff. So we do understand that. We would just ask for some type of proof of that, and then we would make a note to our file. So the way that I currently have all of my investigators set up is that they each are assigned a county. All 58 counties are assigned to one of about 40 investigators. And so you shouldn't be dealing with a million different people. You should have one investigator that deals with your track and trace stuff. In some of the counties, like for instance, today in Mendocino County, I have about 25 staff from throughout the state up there visiting licensees, doing compliance and outreach inspections. So you may see another investigator for your compliance and for your track and trace compliance in that way. But for the most part, you have one primary person, and you can always email our enforcement desk if you're a licensee and say, hey, I'd like to know who my track and trace investigator contact is, and then they would give you their contact information. This is what CDFA's form looks like when you want to change your account manager. So once you've contacted Metric, you will receive this form, you fill it out, and then it's sent into our licensing department. The licensing department has to approve it, let Metric know it's updated in Metric, and then that new account manager would then be able to take the training and begin getting credentialed. So how do employees get access to Metric? I touched on this briefly. Employees must be granted access to Metric by the account manager. This state of California does not, and Metric does not authorize any one-person privileges other than the account manager. We recommend only employees requiring access get access to Metric, and that the account manager not give out. So part of your agreement is to not share your password, to not share access code, because when the person is using that, they're basically certifying under penalty of perjury that the entries are true and correct. So you want to protect that and make sure that the individuals are using the accounts, their own account, that they're not sharing accounts. The account manager must ensure that all employees are trained. So it's not our responsibility, it is the account manager's responsibility. The licensee is responsible for all actions taken by the owners and its employees. So kind of again about protecting accounts and not having your employees share accounts, not sharing passwords, not delegating access of your account to someone else, because ultimately all of what they're putting in comes back on the licensee. We recommend that you cancel the person's access if the individual is no longer authorized by you. So these are some tips for managing employees in Metric. When you set up an employee, make sure that the home page that they default to when logging in into Metric is a page which they have been granted permissions for. Don't set up your employee for the homepage of admin if they don't have admin permissions. Don't set them up for sales if they don't have sales permissions. If an employee does not sign into their new Metric account within 24 hours, they can use the link in the welcome Metric to reset welcome to Metric email, to reset their password. And if they can't find that again, the account manager can request from Metric support a welcome email be resent. We are not going to demonstrate anything today. How do I order tax? So in the regulations, it says that a licensee must use track and trace to record all disposition of plants and cannabis products, right? So then the next requirement is that 3 days from credentialing that you order tags, and the tags are printed in another state, and inside of them they have the RFID reader. They are made to order. The outside of the tag will have your license information and specific numbers on it, a 24-digit UID, unique identifier number on it. Once those tags come to you, you will need to receive them, and you will have, I believe it's 3 days from the day that you receive them. And we know because we use UPS, and we can see when UPS dropped them off at your site. So you have 3 days from that day to record in the system that you've received them. So the tag requirements, 5 calendar days to order tags. You have 3 calendar days once you receive them. It's your job to maintain a sufficient supply of tags. In other states, when you order tags, you have to pay for them at the time that you order them. In California, we include the cost of tags inside of your license fee. So we set tag limits. So that means that if you have a tag limit of 5,000 tags for your license type, and you're doing something really unique and your production is high and you really need 6,000 tags at any given time, you can call and make a request for that. An investigator will ask a few questions to try to better understand. They may come out to look at your operation to make sure that it is a feasible request. And then we can change that tag limit. If your limit is 6,000 and you've used 500 tags, you can order another 500. You don't have to wait until you exhaust that full 6,000. And you are required to retain your used tags for 6 months. And so what I try to tell people to do is when they harvest, to throw those tags in a Ziploc, put the harvest name and date on it, and save them for 6 months. Part of being regulated by the government means you're going to save a lot of records. I mean, people have to get extra storage just for records when it comes to government regulation between all of the agencies and tax agencies. So we understand that, but the requirement for the tags is 6 months. One of the other things we hear a lot about when it comes to tags is that they're not recyclable. Metric is well aware of that. They continue to explore innovations to try to find something that is more recyclable. But in order for it to be soil and waterproof, along with housing the technology, we're stuck with what we have right now. When you order tags, you do that through the admin menu. Tags are sent by UPS, so you can't have PO boxes to have them delivered to. Sometimes in more of our remote farms, they don't have addresses, they don't have a delivery, they use a PO box. So they will have to have them delivered to someone in town or to their residence. All of those things, they will have to have them delivered to. So a lot of times they have questions about that. Right now, that data is confidential. Metric data is confidential, so that wouldn't be something that would be shared. It's not the same as your licensing information. No payment, again, is required from you. Those fees are included in your license fee. We talked about tag limits and how you can order more tags. If for some reason your tag order, you order something and it's wrong, they can't cancel it. You'll have to make a new order. When you receive your tags in Metric, once the tags are delivered, you need to go into Metric to the tags order page and receive your tags. You must record the receipt of your tags in Metric before the tags can be assigned, because that basically activates them. Because what we wouldn't want is for your tags to get lost in UPS's delivery system and someone have the ability to activate them or use them. Record the receipt of the tags before physically attaching tags to plants and packages. How do you establish inventory? So after you receive those tags, you have 30 days to get all of your inventory done. This is your initial inventory. This is not every time I order tags, I have 30 days to put them on. This is your initial establishment of inventory. And this is for our cultivators. So this is all the legal stuff, the different requirements for it. You basically have 30 days to get those tags and package tags on everything. Requirements for establishing inventory for manufacturers. I left this in here in case anybody on the line is dual certified or is a manufacturer that was just interested in the presentation. And the same thing for distributors, retailers, and micro businesses. After you receive your plant or package tags, you must go in and receive them so that way they're activated. And for cultivators and micro businesses licensed to perform cultivation activities, you must assign a plant tag to all immature plant lots of 100 per lot. Okay, those 100 need to be the same strain, and it needs to be 100 plants. Like I said, Metric will let you do whatever you want. There's days that I've looked in Metric and I see one immature plant tag assigned to 400 plants. So I can clearly see right there that that person is in violation. So just remember that Metric is not going to stop you from doing anything that you should not do. It's not a regulatory database. It does not regulate you. It records what you do for the regulators. So you're going to attach a plant tag to all of your plants, and there is a requirement on the lot of the 100 plants that each plant reflects the 24-digit UID number. Remember how I said regulations weren't always our favorite, but we have to enforce them? So if I have a bunch of little seedlings or baby clones, how do I do that? One of the ways that I've seen that I think works pretty well is people just get a simple Avery label it, stick it on a toothpick, put the toothpick near the plant. But again, you know, it's seeing innovation. So I went down to Santa Barbara and they were doing row planting of seeds. Those seeds, when they become little tiny plants, they're in their permanent flowering area. So that means that they would require one of those big, huge tags to be affixed to them. So it's problems like that that we run into. And as a regulator, I want to be part of the solution. Let's solve that. Let's get policy that addresses it so that the licensee can be compliant and not run the risk of being out of compliance. And so if we run up against an issue like that, the best thing you can do is talk to us. So that way we can try to find a way to solve it rather than you being out of compliance. So in that instance, we had to kind of deal with the tagging of the plants and waiting until we could affix the tag once it was larger, but then there was a tagging way of each row. Very difficult, not simple. Are we considering not having to tag every individual baby plant? You don't, right now, that's not on the table for the regulations. But I think, like for me, I've spent my career, before I came here, I was an auditor, right? So for me, it's if I can walk out there and I can come to your site and everything makes sense. If there is a square, I don't know the size dimension, I'll say 24 by 24 square, and that's a lot for you, and it has 100 little baby seedlings or clones in it, and there is one blue tag assigned to that, that makes sense to me, but that's not what the law says or the regs say right now. So we are going to go through an emergency regulatory package for the new department if it is established through the governor's budget. And then shortly thereafter, when we begin to do permanent regs, we're going to open up our regs again. And that's where hopefully a lot of this will get fixed. I know that I have between my staff and I, we have a long list of things just like that, where we would like to see some common sense applied now that we know more and we're not making these blind assumptions. But we will have to, just like if it was your idea, you would have to go through the regulatory process. We'll have to do that. So again, please, you know, when you see a regulation that makes no sense or doesn't help your business, and it's reasonable, send us a letter. You can email us a letter to the enforcement inbox, and we save all of those. And when we open up regs, we go back to those letters and we look at them. And then once there's regs, whether it's emergency or permanent regs, there's always a public comment period. So we really encourage you to use that. So thank you so much, Patricia, for that question. So going back to the presentation, there's some information on cultivators and micro businesses in here. But basically, any plant that is in its permanent flowering area or has a pistil of a 1/2 inch or greater needs to have its own plant tag affixed to it. There's some language in the regs that basically is like a tamper-proof thing. Well, we use zip ties. 90% of the time we're using zip ties. And then people say, oh, well, you could just cut the zip tie. That's absolutely true. Sorry, I'm looking at the questions. Yes, you can send them through email, and I'm going to give out the enforcement email address at the end of this, and we will make sure that you get that and you can send your stuff there. It may not be where it ends up. We may forward it over to a different email box, but we will have it. So on the harvest, we'll get into that a little bit more, but there's not a package tag assigned to that. One of the big questions that has come up is, what do I do if after I've harvested and my packages are lots of totes? Say I have 10 totes for one package, what do I do? People ask, can I just write the last 4 of the 24-digit number? If you have more than one license, we recommend that you do not do that, because every license, so the unique 24-digit number is unique only to your license. That means if you have 3 licenses, they could all get that same number, and that can make things convoluted. So the best practice that we have observed is that they'll make a photocopy of the tag that it belongs to and write on there like 2 of 10, 3 of 10, and affix them to the different totes. And then when it's all done, they'll just rip them off. So Emily Porter's asking or stating that reusable zip ties allow for less plastic waste and is more affordable. Is this a compliant option for adhering to UID tags? Absolutely. So like I said, even if you put a zip tag that's a one-time use, if you wanted to cut that tag and put it on a different plant, you could do that, and we would never know unless we actually physically observed you doing that. So as long as there's a zip tie or some type of something holding it to the base of the plant, but not where it's buried in the soil. It has to be where we can get to it. So great, great option there, Emily. Okay, so, and then on the packages, like I said, just make sure that it's clear. Like when I go out and I work with a licensee, I try to remind them that, you know, you have people, state regulators, not everybody has the same style or the same knowledge base. So your goal is to make your operation as simple to observe as possible. And that way you don't have to stand there and explain everything, because that's when we run into problems, when your whole operation has to be explained. Ideally, if I'm out there and I'm doing a compliance review, I've got your application, I've got your premises diagram, and I have your metric report, and everything matches. The metric tag says tag 24 is going to be in room 3. When I go to room 3, I look for tag 24, and there it is. So you want to do that as simple as possible. If you have multiple licenses, we have seen some great things. Is it allowable to use plastic coated wire to affix tags? I wouldn't violate you for that. I think, ideally, you would even be able to use hemp rope or something that's recyclable. Let me confirm with my team that they don't have issues with plastic coated wire for that, but I think that that's a doable option. It's reusable. You can undo it and put it on another one. Okay. now I have a question about, in regards to harvest with lots of totes and lots of untrimmed buck flower, what category should harvest package? So harvest does not have a package. So when you, sorry, I have to go based on, I'm going to explain what I think were, okay. So you said totes, so that means you put it in a tote. So when you put it in a tote, that is a package. If it's in a drying room and it's just hanging and it's hanging out there and it's bucked, but it's just still drying out, but you put it in a tote, then on the, is it okay to make subsequent packages from that initial harvest package? So we wouldn't call it a harvest package at that point. We would just call it a package. And yes, you can absolutely take your package deductions to either to make a new package, or you can say this is going to waste, and we're weighing all of this and this is waste. So I hope that makes sense. Can I just get confirmation, Sebastian, that that made sense? That once you have a big main package, so you've went through your harvest had a name, now it is in 10 totes and packages and it's ready to be trimmed. So it's out on the trim room, and then you're going to maybe make 20 individual packages out of that one package, or from the 10 totes. You'll make your 20 packages, you'll weigh your waste, deduct your weight from that master package, and then you'll go down from there. Did that make sense, Sebastian? Okay, I'm hoping that it did. Yeah, okay, perfect. So we do have a little bit of information in this presentation about harvest. Sorry. And I'll get to that. So what type of transfer should I use? And this is, for cultivators, it's pretty simple. A transfer has to be created in metric, so the transfer or the manifest. This should look familiar to all of my licensees. It has to be created anytime a package moves from one licensed facility to another, even if they're on the same property. The destination facility can reject some or all of the packages. What I recommend is that you guys pay attention to outgoing and incoming weights, because that's where a lot of the problems, people are trying to hustle, they're trying to get fast. Right now is our season. We're coming up on 420. Our system is going crazy with all of the activity in it. And that's where we see people getting sloppy because they're just trying to get the job done. And then we have a mess afterwards to try to clean up. So we recommend really paying attention to that incoming or that outbound and incoming weight and count. Rejected packages will require originating licensee to receive that package back into inventory. It can't just disappear. Only distributors and micro businesses with distributors can transport packages. So you, even though somebody's, you've got a buddy and they're like really, screaming for product, you cannot transfer that without using a licensed distributor. The only exception to using a licensed distributor is for testing laboratories, which can transport package for the test sample. And those are the official state sample. And there's, if I came and I seized product, or if law enforcement ever seized product, they don't need to use a distributor. Common transfer mistakes: using the wrong transfer type, not completing the transfer, incomplete elements of a transfer. You forgot to record weight, you forgot to record something. Like I said, metric is not going to tell you, hey, big red screen, you didn't do this. It's just going to record what you put into it. Receiving goods into inventory that should have been rejected. The other thing that we see, and I don't know that I have a lot of people who would be receiving, but let's just say that you're a cultivator and you're receiving a batch of clones from a nursery, or you go in and you receive a transfer that was never yours. You were identified as the receiver in error, and you said that you took in 1,000 clones when those clones never came to you. So you need to pay attention to your manifest to make sure stuff like that doesn't happen. If you do notice an error, you need to call metric support, and they can help you figure out how to best undo that error or document it. Transfer types, a transfer is used for all transfers requiring the use of a wholesale manifest or return. A return is a transfer back to the originator, either for defective product or product that you do not decide that you don't want. And then there's a wholesale manifest that's used when transferring products to a retailer licensee. So, and that should not be happening with our cultivators, because our cultivators should be transferring to distributors. So transporters, only distributors and micro businesses with a distributor activity can transport packages. Again, the exception is the testing laboratory. Before leaving the originating premises, the transporter must verify that all the information on the manifest is complete and correct. This is important for you as the originating premises to make sure that they are doing this, and that you guys are counting everything. That way you're reducing the potential for employee theft or diversion, and you're maintaining security of your and control of your inventory. At the time of departure from the originating license, the transporter reports the departure time in metric. That's really for the transporter, and upon arriving at the destination premises, the transporter reports the time of arrival. How do you and when do you adjust a package? So if the current quantity in a package is different from the quantity recorded in metric, a package adjustment should be made. Common reasons for package adjustments are on-site testing. You're doing local quality assurance testing. There's a scale variance. For some reason, your scales are off. Something happened, it spoiled, it got mold, or the product was no longer viable. Weight change due to moisture. So we have in cultivation, we have a wet weight and a dry weight. The dry weight must be recorded within 60 days. That means you have to capture the weight again for a second time. And it could be immediate, because what we see is that stuff goes flash frozen, but you need to get those two weights. You need to get the weight when you cut it and the weight when it goes into a package or it leaves your facility. In the supplemental user guide, there's a complete list of adjustment reasons. On-site testing is defined in statute in Business and Professions Code section 26100K. Those results are not recorded in metric. Those are for you as the individual or the buyer. Report activity as a package adjustment, and it says more details to come. Those are in the California supplemental guide. How and when do I finish a package? There's nothing when there's nothing physically remaining. So the question was asked earlier, if I have large totes and I break those totes down into other quantities and waste, now the 10 totes are empty. So that's when you would finish that package that was associated to those 10 totes. When you finish a package, that tag number or UID number is then moved to the inactive tag. So if I'm going out as a regulator, I wouldn't be looking for that tag at your site, because that is a finished tag. Only packages with a quantity of 0 can be finished. If there's any quantity remaining, whether it's positive or negative, in metric for a physically empty package, you need to utilize the package adjustment function to explain the discrepancy before you finish the package. So that means if you, for some reason or another, have an ounce sitting in a package, but the package is literally physically empty, you would do a package adjustment of a negative ounce. So then that brings it to 0, and you are able to finish that package and inactivate that package tag. Harvest. So harvests don't get a tag. Harvests are named according to our current regulation, and then their weight is recorded in metric. And you have, we know that not all harvests, that you can have one harvest, but it can take several days. So you do have more than one day to enter the harvest. No multi-strain harvest. We've had a lot of questions about multi-strains. And so harvest should be of a single strain. And we also have questions about multi-strain packages, and those are packages that are non-manufactured cannabis, of course, for our cultivators, and they are combined strains or harvests. And I do caution my licensees that I've spoken to about multi-strain, because you can have plants or strains that are exposed to something and may not pass testing, and when you combine all of them, you lose everything, or you have to remediate, if that's an option, everything. So just be very careful and know your operation before you start mixing and combining stuff. When I first came on, Colorado used examples where like a certain portion of their greenhouse was exposed to Freon because of a leaky hose. And so when they combined the entire greenhouse failed because of that exposure. So we just want to caution you. We know that it's a rock and a hard place, because you want to have your state testing as much as possible, because you don't want to have to pay for multiple state testing. But you have to consider that in your operation and make whatever is the best choice for you. But the multi-strain package is a combination of post-harvest. Okay, so regulations require all harvests be uniform in strain. If a multi-strain harvest is creative, steps must be taken to correct that. Again, this is a regulation where I would prefer to defer to you and allow you to do what you're going to do and risk what you're going to risk, because it's not necessarily the strain that causes the risk, it's the exposure, the environmental exposures where it's grown. Early detection of the multi-strain situation simplifies the correction in the process. It is suggested that you check the value in the strain column on the plants page in the harvest tab immediately after the initial harvest, after the addition of plants, before recording your harvest waste, and before creating any packages from the harvest. So either correcting multi-strain harvest in metric, you have 48 hours to do it. That's basically what it is. Packages have not been created from them yet, but the harvest batch is multi-strain. You have 48 hours to correct that. And these are the steps on how you would do that and what is recommended. When you finish the harvest, there's nothing physically. It's just like the packages. You've accounted for all of the harvest batch moving into a package or being documented as waste. How to create a test sample package, and that would have been a demonstration that we're not going to do today. I apologize for that. Do I need to purchase additional software? In order to use Metric, you do not need to purchase additional software, but for your operation, you may choose to use a third-party software that integrates with Metric. We see that a lot in the retail sales environment and the distribution environment, but we want you guys to do your due diligence and make sure that that company knows what they're doing. So in my other role outside of track and trace, when I'm looking at just my licensees and compliance, I'm also looking at the businesses that I see them doing business with. And if I believe that there's been a predatory practice, I will refer that to the DA. So we have an industry where we have a lot of really amazing and intelligent and smart people and great agencies or entities, business associations and whatnot, just like Nevada, our alliance here that's hosting this. But we also have a lot of predators and people just waiting to take advantage, and they really don't know the laws, and they really are going to get you in a lot of trouble. When I do illegal grows, I've been to illegal grows that hand me falsified documents, and these people think they have a license when they don't, because they relied solely on an individual and paid them money without ever checking them. So we're cautioning you, and we want you to do your due diligence when you're looking for software companies as well. We do not, Metric does not outsource, does not have partners, or they don't do third-party companies. The state does not validate anybody at this time. We don't have like a validation list of people that we say that, you know, these are our preferred people. We don't do anything like that. Not all aspects of Metric are available for third-party access. So you need to make sure that whatever you're expecting from them is actually being done, because some APIs can't meet all of your regulatory requirements. And then the state does not look at other systems, only the metric system. So that means that when I'm going out and I'm doing your regulatory compliance, I can't rely on your third-party software company. I can only use the data that I can pull from metric in order to verify whether you have compliance or not. So if your third-party software is taking 5 days to upload, and the regulatory requirement is that disposition changed is documented within 3 business days, then you're out of compliance. So those are things that you have to be responsible for, making sure that when you're paying these third-party softwares that they're actually doing what they're supposed to, and they're not putting you in a position to be out of compliance. These are support resources. So this will likely change when the department is consolidated. Instead of having 3 different point of contacts, you'll have a single point of contact with the state agencies. There's the metric support tab, and there's all these different guides that are associated with that. There's interactive support with metric, where you can call them and get them on the phone, or you can email them. And then there are also trainings, a supplemental guide, and then there was a transition period guide that still exists, but it is becoming obsolete. So I wanted to talk a little bit about training, because I said there was a 2.5-hour training that all account managers had to attend. That is not negotiable, and that will stand. But there's new training, that the advanced training, this PowerPoint is a little bit outdated. It is here. We have it for the cultivators. We do not have it for any of the other licensees yet, but there is advanced training. You can find that in Metric. There's also coming soon today, I just heard about a software system where they actually have courses already loaded for some of the general metric, where it's kind of consistent between the states, where it's on-demand advanced training and micro sessions, because that was our feedback was, people don't want to sit through a 2-hour training, and people would like to have the training open where they can stop it and pause it while they're actually doing the work as a guidance tool for them. And so that is what this tool is supposed to do. And we are going to be reviewing it, and then it will go out for deployment. So when I say coming soon, in state time, you should see that in a couple months. So I'm really excited about that. I think that would be helpful, because I know that when I use a system, if I have a tutorial like that, that I can pause and access, and it's specific to the function that I'm trying to access, it is extremely helpful. So that concludes my presentation. Do I have any questions about track and trace, or compliance, or just the program in general with CDFA at this point?
I have a question, Diana here. And
Hey.
Tabitha, thank you so much. It's just wonderful for you to be joining us again here in Nevada County. And so my question is this, is that here in Nevada County, we, of course, are a legacy community. So many of our farmers have been cultivating for generations, decades, and our genetics are so important to us up here. They are what makes us unique. They are what will be setting the basis for our appellations program, or establishment of appellations. And so can you talk to us about how we can most effectively move our specific genetics that, these may be dating back to, for generations? How can we bring those into our farm? Because I'm hearing conflicting things that it's no longer allowed, or what's up?
So it is not allowed right now, right?
Oh,
So
no.
I bet you everybody's heard about no source, right? And so and just for transparency, because what I really want to do is establish an element of trust with my industry and myself. So when we were going through this and trying to look at what the law says, because the law says it has to come from another license, right? And we have licensed nurseries in our program that their expectation is they're going to sell to our program, right? And that's their business model. So to prohibit that could, or to allow in the way that no source has been used in the past. We walk out to a farm, that farm's an acre, and they've got a bunch of clones that came out of nowhere, right? We can't allow that to happen. But, and that's no source with the adherence of the law. But one of the things when we reverted back to that was the state team was, I told them, I have concerns with genetics, because I'm not a grower. My education has come from the industry, from the growers. And be it good or bad, that's my only place of knowledge. But it seems to me that you would almost have like, if a whole family was incestuous after a while, if you only allow from sources and you don't allow any new interjection that may be occurring through, like what you said, legacy. That's how this industry was built. So HCGA reached out to Richard. We are meeting next week. Our goal is to try to find a way to establish an entry point for that. So I'm not saying that we would ever allow somebody to bring in 1 million clones, right? But we would, I think it's very feasible for us to allow, based on the size of the operation, seeds and mother plants that can be cloned, right? I don't know. I need to learn more about this to understand, is that an incorrect assumption? What am I looking at? But the first conversation is scheduled to happen next week. So hopefully we can resolve this at least sooner than later, because that is the thing that I'm most excited about. Because if we don't have these genetics, and just understanding the little bit that I do, through all of the years of having to do this underground, we lost a lot of things from heritage strains that we need to bring back. That pest resistance and being able to deal with drought and all of those things. We want those genetic things that were in the heirloom seeds or the original seeds, right? I don't know how that works. I don't know how we're going to get seeds from Russia, Afghanistan, all over the world where they're finding stuff. I don't know how that goes because, I have no control over that. But we do have control over California. So I would like to see an avenue and a pathway to bring those genetics in. It has to be reasonable because we don't want to injure our nurseries, right? But we also want to keep our market viable to where it's not using the same stuff over and over because we've locked it down so much. And I think that's where we want to get to. So that wasn't the intent, but the law says it has to come from a nursery, right? And I don't even want to ask the question, where does the nursery get everything, right? Because I don't clearly see that in law. So this is something I think we have to clean up. I'm hopeful that we can do it through policy rather than regulation at this point. So that way we can allow it sooner than later, but we're going to have a conversation. If you guys do not know this, there is an industry group that has been started. We have met 3 times. We were going to limit that group to 10 participants and do a bunch of surveys. And I'll do my survey plug in a minute. But I have concerns with that because not everybody has a seat at the table. And, I appreciate you, Alliance, but I have a lot of growers that aren't a part of an association and that have needs, right? So how do I hear all the voices? So I think what we're going to do is we're probably going to go to a model where it's a webinar, but only certain people can speak and interact so that it doesn't become chaotic and it's productive, right? Because having been in state government for 25 years, I know that we can meet all day long and never have any outcomes. And I'm not going to do that, right? So it will come back to that forum once we start meeting, having this dialogue, but we can't solve this in a vacuum. We're going to need the industry to tell us what is reasonable. So if anybody on the line has any ideas or anything, can speak to this, can educate me, I'm going to make sure Maggie has my email address. You can share that freely, Maggie. I'm not going to violate anybody's chain of command. So if one of my investigators is telling you to do something, do it. But if you have ideas or you're like, Tabitha, I think you just need to know this, that's helpful to me. And like I said, my education has come from the industry. The fact that I do know that things were bred out and that we need to recapture those things comes from one of the partners you mentioned about Humboldt Seed, and so those are things that I would like us to do, especially as other state markets open. My goal and my hope is that one day it'll be free trade nationally and internationally. Everybody loves California weed, and that goes back to the appellations piece of it. Appellations and OCal in the merger are scheduled to stay with CDFA. They're proposed. And so I think that is a great thing because that aids in normalization of our industry. I know, like you said, you're a legacy community, and my exposure has been that there's been a lot of prejudice as growers, right? I've been at career fairs, ag career fairs, and I'll have people just walk away from me the minute that they find out that I'm cannabis, right? And so we're dealing with a culture right now in our culture that deals with a lot of discrimination, but there's also this discrimination within our own ag industry. And so we're looking for opportunities to normalize and promote the consumption, whether it's recreational or medicinal, because like I tell people, until, some of these people who are staunch, negative, anti-cannabis people have a little baby that in their family that's flopping around like a fish, and the minute you give them some oil, their quality of life is changed, we're not going to have the acceptance that we need, right? And that's unfortunate. So thank you for that. It's the truth. And so you have that on the regulator side, you have that in CDFA. So we are going to try to find ways to continue through the appellations and organics to make us a quality program, to where we are renowned, because when these states open up, which I hope it's sooner than later, we don't want, people considering New York weed, Nebraska weed. We want them to consume California weed from the legal market, which leads me to the illegal market. And for my people that are on here that may not be licensed, the fact that you're on here is a good first step. And I appreciate that, but we are moving to a place where if you are not licensed, you're going to have enforcement. If you've been listening to budget hearings, that is what they are looking at, is the unlicensed grows. And, I'm a straight shooter. I'm not going to pull any punches. I need you guys to know that we are working on that. Where I'm at right now is because we have 15 warrants that we have to serve in the next couple of days. And it's sad because I see some of the most beautiful plants and operations in the illegal market. I also see some of the most disgraceful, embarrassing, and environmentally detrimental ones in the illegal market. But just know that enforcement is going to be ramped up for the illegal market. And so that is why we have to make this careful balance between our no source and our genetics and all of that stuff. But we want to find solutions that work best for the licensed market. So sorry, I'll step off my soapbox now.
Thank you so much, Tabitha. That was just, you're awesome. We are so appreciative of you, being in the position you are and being as accessible as you are. And so I want to remind people that Tabitha's email's in there. And I also want to say that there is this working group that's been established between the industry and CDFA that Tabitha mentioned. And in the Alliance's Slack channel that all the members have access to, we have a track and trace little tab. And we are tracking all of the members' track and trace issues. So please use that, because what we are doing is we are making sure that our representatives in that working group, which is the Origins Council, which represents all of our interests here as legacy operators, is receiving those and can best advocate on our behalf during those policy meetings between CDFA and the other associations. So know that we have an avenue for advocacy. So please let us know what your issues are. And I'll hand it back to you, Maggie.
Yeah, Tabitha, I would nominate you as the Cal Cannabis spokeswoman after what you just said.
No, wait, I'm gonna get in trouble for, I'll get in trouble, but that's okay. At the end of the day, I have to do what I can live with, so.
We are very grateful. There are a couple more questions here in the Q&A. The first is, and I think these are all regarding sort of the seed, a couple of these are regarding seeds. So I thought new licenses were able to start with a beginning inventory, which included seeds. Is that correct?
So they were, and it is my understanding that they are not at this point. It would have to be manifested into their license. So that is the problem that I'm struggling with, right? You're a new license. Your grandmother created a strain and you want to bring it to market. The way that the current policy is, you cannot do that. And so we know that that's a deficiency, and that's what our goal is, to try to get it sooner than later through policy. And if not, then to look at what regulatory changes are needed and how we can go about that, because I think that there's an opportunity here to make the program much better if we can just find an answer and a solution. So that begins next week.
Awesome.
So seeds ended on December 31st of 2020, and the plants and the packages ended in June of 2020. There were exceptions made, and then we were told, hey, you guys can't do that. It has to revert back to what the law says. And so that's why some people right after June were able to do it, and then everybody got put on hold. And then I sent out nasty emails to everybody saying, sorry, no source isn't approved. And that's where we're at right now. So there's not going to be a way to get your plants and your packages approved that are there, but the legacy genetics we have to deal with sooner than later. So I'm committed to that, and so is Richard.
Thanks so much. The next question has to do with, so if you, through the correct chains, get your clones for the season from a licensed nursery, and once you start growing out those plants, you realize that maybe some of the names had been mixed up from the nursery to you of the strains. Are you allowed in metric to rename some of those strains?
So we don't regulate strains, and when you talk about evolution, hopefully we get to a place where we have a bona fide catalog, right? Because I believe, as I understand, so I am a part of a national standards group that set standards for all industries. ASTM, if you guys aren't familiar with it, another group that's really good to look at, because they do have a cannabis delegation within it. And one of the things that, as I understand it, is that there's something called Cosmic, that was kind of like a catalog for DNA for strains, right? If somebody says that it's wedding cake, this is what wedding cake would have in it in order to be wedding cake, or Gorilla Glue, or whatever strain we're talking about. But that was not an official standard, and as I understand it, there may be some biases associated with that. So metric, you could buy something and then call it whatever you wanted afterwards, and that's a good and a bad thing, right? Because certain consumers want a certain product because they enjoy the consumption of that particular product, and that literally means that I could buy something that was primarily indica and market it as something that it's not, right? And so I believe that metric allows you to change the strain names, and I will double check that. I'm going to make a note for myself to double check that and get back to you. And if I'm wrong, I'll make sure that I correct myself.
Perfect. And then the last question here, say you have a plant that turns out to be a male plant and it produces seeds. Can a seed package be made from a flower package?
I have no idea, but there has to be a way, because I know that I've observed operations that do produce their own seeds. So let me figure out how that's done.
Awesome. Folks on the line, if you have additional questions, now is a perfect time to enter them into the Q&A feature or here in the chat.
Sorry, can I ask a quick question while we're waiting for more questions? Or if we get any more. So if I were a grower and I noticed that my female is really a male, and I'm going to pull that plant out of my production immediately and isolate it, right?
Yeah.
I'm not gonna
there are also circumstances in which your plant throughout its entire growth might be female, and when you're processing the flowers, you happen to just find a couple of seeds in the flowers that you might want to keep and try to germinate for next year, say.
Okay. So, but I can assume that if the plant produced a large amount of seeds, that plant would have been moved and isolated, right? The reason I'm asking this is because if it's just a few seeds and you find them during, production processing of the plant, that's different than if I find, an ounce of seeds, right? Because seeds are captured by weight. So for me as an investigator, when I put my investigator hat on, I should have seen that male plant be moved from the flowering room into some other room at some point if it was a large producing plant. Like it is not reasonable for me to see a pound of seeds come out of one of these plants. That would have to be actually like seed production.
There's another circumstance that I can just think of off the top of my head in case it's helpful, where say I've got my garden, I find one male plant in it, as soon as I find it, I remove it. It's possible that I didn't remove it in time, and that my female plants will have seeds in them then, but I don't have, it's too much of an investment to then destroy all of my plants, but now I have seeded flower.
So in that instance,
a ton of seeds.
To notify us to where if we needed an inspection, whether it's in person or video, then we could do that to validate, okay, this really did happen. I think that's reasonable, but let me find out how we go about taking something that how we capture seeds and what happens if it's found during the course of unknown that we thought it was a female plant and now we're finding seeds. So I'll find out about that. Thank you for that extra information.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a question that just came in. It says, when are we able to have plants on site once approved, once our application is submitted and acknowledged by state and county, or only after 100% approval by state and county?
Only after 100% of approval. So that is another area of enforcement that you are going to see, because that then sets you up for no source. And so it's kind of like a chain of effect. So if you've got a liquor license, you couldn't sell liquor until your license was approved. And that's the same thing. You cannot engage in commercial cultivation until your license is issued. So that doesn't just mean, or not issued, but so you're going to get an email. If you're an applicant, you're going to get an email from us that says, hey, we received your application. By the way, you cannot grow until you have a license from us. Then your next step is you're going to get an app. Once you've met all of the requirements, you're going to get one saying your license is approved. You need to pay us. Okay. So until you pay us and you actually have a license from us in the system, not just that it's printed out, but you actually are issued a license in the system, meaning that it's been issued and paid for, then you can start your cultivation activities. So being in possession of more than 6 plants, any amounts of cannabis more than would be for a personal grow, all of that stuff factors in, and you are going to see enforcement on that this next year. So because what we'll see is we'll see people who have an application in with us, and it goes all the way through, and then they say, oh no, I want to change something or reapply, and now they're doing it again, and all they're paying is application fees. They're never paying a license fee. So then what you run into is that they're unfairly competing with our licensed market. So you're going to see enforcement on that end. And again, that's why I think that we have to have an avenue to declare during the application process or during your license holder process, genetics and mothers. Because I think that when you come into the program, you should be able to have a certain amount of those. And we have to work on, when you're an applicant, how does that conflict with personal use, and where did you get it, and it not licensed. But I still think there's a way to get that in here, even if it's only seeds. But those are all the questions that we have, and that we couldn't make any exception to when we were trying to deal with the no source issues to get to ourselves compliant.
Thank you so much for just phenomenally thorough responses.
Sorry.
No, it's fantastic. Do not apologize. If anybody else has questions, now is the time to submit them. Tabitha's email address is in the chat feature here. She also provided right after that the the enforcement email address.
I think that only went to you guys. It says all panelists, and when I looked, I didn't see.
I will switch that.
Okay, sorry, I didn't do
No
attendee.
worries. Here is the enforcement email address there. And just as a go for it, Tabitha.
Sorry, that email address will change when we become a new department. So I'll make sure when we get our new email addresses that I email the alliance and everybody else, we're going to send out information about that. But just know that if we do become a new department as intended, that email address will change.
Perfect. Thanks so much. And yeah, we will, as the Alliance, will absolutely, when those department changes happen, we will certainly be notifying everybody as to new contacts and so forth to replace the old contact information they've got. Awesome. This has been phenomenal, Tabitha. You are really so good at talking about this. And I appreciate your perspective and your willingness and your desire and passion to work with folks just so tremendously. It is everything, really.
Thank you. I appreciate your guys' honesty and being willing to educate me. And I thank you for the time.
Absolutely. So I want to just remind folks, we have one anonymous question here. We'd love to hear about legacy strains ASAP after your meeting next week and decisions are made. If something is figured out at the meeting, could it be in effect for this year, or does it go to policy for a future vote?
I'm looking for immediate, what can we do? So we're going to get some basic information from HCGA because they're the ones that have inquired about it. If I have outstanding questions, I will start to pull all of my contacts. But I'm looking for an immediate solution because this is something that I don't think, since my assumption was correct, that it can be pushed off very long. So my goal is to try to bring resolution to this quickly. Where we will run into something, if it's a problem, is if our attorneys tell us we cannot do this in policy, that we would be violating, or we're running into underground regulations, then we have to look for another avenue. But I think it's been made obvious here that I think that we need to find a pathway, a legal pathway to do this sooner than later. So I can make that commitment to you, and I can make the commitment to feed out to the industry association and make sure that they know that the topic was addressed. HCGA is one of the primary members of the industry group. So, excuse me. But I will follow up with a communication to the contacts that I have, so that in that way you guys are up to date on it. If I have questions, I'll reach out, and I may need some education for myself and the other policy people and those above me. If you guys want to proactively send me anything on why this is so important and why we need this and what does reasonable look like, you guys know the operational sizes. And that may be one of our biggest hurdles because of the personal use laws and the criminalization pieces of it. But I think that there's a solution somewhere in this. And so just please know that we're going to try to get this sooner than later. We're not deferring this for next year. We're not deferring this for the new department.
Thank you so much, Tabitha. That's so helpful. And just as a reminder to everyone that we're tracking this very, very, very closely. We work in partnership with HCGA and through Origins Council. So as soon as we learn things, both through Tabitha as well as through the industry, the first place you're going to see this is on the Alliance's Slack channel. That's where we will be getting out real-time information on this. And as we learn more, we'll continue to put it out on there because this is definitely a high priority. So thanks for raising that. Anonymous commenter, thank you.
Thank you.
Awesome. With that, I just want to remind everybody that this has been recorded. The recording will become available in the next few days, certainly within the week. And I also want to remind folks that we have some really fabulous upcoming industry affairs calls, both this month and next month. Next month, there is one that is sort of a deeper dive into cultivating with metric, for folks who have never done it before, or just the process, what, you know, when you're in the field and so forth, step by step. Definitely make sure to tune in and continue learning about these things. Tabitha, just thank you so much for your time and your knowledge tonight. We are so grateful for you and that you are working in the position that you are. And please reach out to us here at the Alliance if you have any questions. You can reach us at info@nccannabisalliance.org. Our website is nccannabisalliance.org. We are here for our local industry. Contact us if you have questions about what's going on, membership, so forth. We truly are stronger together. So it's very important that we are all in communication and working on these things in alliance. With that, I will give everybody their evenings and wish everybody an adieu. Have a wonderful Thursday evening. Hold on one second. We have one last question that just came in. Can you please confirm where distributors must sign on metric transfers when picking up packages from the farm?
Okay, hold on. I'm gonna go off camera here and I'm gonna look for that slide. So the right now I have no regulatory authority in the distributors, so I'm gonna look and hopefully I'll be able to answer that. But BCC, they are the distributor portion of the manifest. They're the owners of that. Sorry, I want to go in and share my screen. Hold on. It's funny, I used to be the technology guru, and now everybody's outgrown me. Okay, so do you guys see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, let me go quick. Sorry, I'm not sure why it went black. Hold on. Okay, so let's get to the go to the manifest page. Okay, I'm going to try to increase this in size and let's see. Okay, so see down here, product rejection. So they sign here if they're rejecting it. I do not see a signature block. So
it looks like there was
that would be a great question when you guys have your metric people come, because you guys are going to have metric.
Yes. Well,
Okay.
not metric themselves, like from the metric team.
Okay. Then I will ask that question tomorrow morning of my colleagues over at BCC, and I will get back to you. Where does the distributor sign? Yeah,
and just as a follow-up to that, I think there's just another comment here regarding that the driver seems to sign in one place, the receiver in a different place, potentially.
Perfect. So I will ask that and see if I can get a reference to any of the like manifest training stuff that BCC may have, and I will send that over to you guys.
Great, thanks so much. Yeah, and these are great questions also for the industry affairs call next month on May 12th. Reach out to us for more information on that if you'd like it. And yeah, I want to just thank everybody for joining us this evening. As a reminder, the next Get Legit webinar is May 6th and will be on commercial cannabis pesticide overview with the local Nevada County Ag Department. You can register for that online. And please tune in to the Alliance on social media, contact us. We are here. We want to know where you're at with things, what you're experiencing, how we can be of support, and how we can all work together. And thank you all for joining us. Tabitha, you're amazing. Thank you so much for your time this evening. We will be in touch.
Thank you.
And I just appreciate everybody participating. We hope to see you again soon. And please reach out to us here at the Alliance. Have a wonderful evening.